closed door session. So I make a motion to go to closed session number 2, item B, to discuss attorney-client opinion letter proposal on 24-hour shifts.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second by Amy Baranski. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Okay, member Baranski,
Yes.
member Blanky,
Yes.
member Carnegie,
Yes.
Number 2, item B, to discuss attorney-client
member Parker,
She said yes.
member Lethbridge,
Yes.
member Shornash,
Yes.
member Whitwicky.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Motion carries. We're going to closed session at 8 o'clock.
All right, leave this meeting and
Thank you.
I'll send you the new ID number.
Great, thank you.
Mike, was I on your screen?
She said yes.
I don't know.
No. Kelly, was I on your screen? Okay, I wasn't on mine, but
All right, leave this meeting and I'll send you the new ID number.
Great, thank you.
Mike, was I on your screen? No. Kelly, was I on your screen? Okay, I wasn't on mine, but.
what was it, 8:20, 26, 29, sorry, 8:29. Okay, I'll move on to.
Suzanne's not in.
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Suzanne has not been admitted into the meeting.
Okay.
By the way, the feedback appears to be coming through Kathy's mic. When Mike talks, Kathy's microphone is indicating that it's picking something up. So if you can figure out how to mute that until it's time to talk, that would probably help.
Thanks, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, Suzanne has not been admitted into the meeting.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Feedback appears to be coming through Kathy's mic. When Mike talks, Kathy's microphone is indicating that it's picking something up. So if you can figure out how to mute that until it's time to talk, that would probably help.
Thanks, Mike.
Does this help you at all? Does that help you at all? I mean, have you?
No, I got it right in front of me, so I'm good.
I'm gonna shut, that's where the feedback comes.
I shut it off.
Okay, all right.
Okay, any comments, questions from closed session? Everybody's good? Okay, I see no hands. Item 6, citizen participation in agenda items.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if, was anybody going to make a motion about
Oh, yes, yes,
yeah,
yes,
to discuss in closed session?
Okay, okay.
yes, sorry. Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, go ahead, Ms. Baranski. That's why I asked the question. I thought maybe she didn't want to.
Oh, no, I was gonna make I forgot, I'm sorry, all the back and forth. I would like to make a motion that, council form a subcommittee to explore the feasibility of, entering into negotiations with the Public Safety Department, regarding, 24-hour shifts.
A second.
I believe we're not to enter negotiation, it's to review it for city review, but not negotiations.
Right,
Right, yeah.
yeah, is just to explore the feasibility.
Right.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Baranski.
I'll second.
We have a second by Susan Kalka. Need a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage, Member Shornack.
You guys have horrible feedback.
Yeah. Member Winwicki.
Yes,
All right, thank you. 7-0.
Are the mics off there?
Ed Horn is working on something.
No,
So at this point,
Councilwoman Baranski?
sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point, do we discuss who's on the committee or who wants to be on the committee? Okay.
Yes, we get volunteers or nominate. You can nominate anybody or volunteer.
I will volunteer to participate in the committee.
Okay,
I would hope you would as well, Mr. Mayor. I would nominate Mr. Mayor.
Mike Carnegie and David Winwicki.
Second.
okay, I'll accept it.
with all due respect, I would have to respectfully decline. There's a lot of things going on in,
You don't have to explain it.
okay,
Well, I would like to nominate then Mike Lessig to assist with my portion.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you.
I'll do it.
Okay. Ms. Kalka?
I'll learn.
There you go.
I'm not opposed to learning new things.
So Mike Carnegie, Suzanne, and Amy. Do we need to have Do we need?
Yes, let's make a formal motion.
We do need it? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. there's-
Yes, I would, please do.
Okay, I would like to make a motion then that the subcommittee include myself, Mayor Carnegie, and Councilwoman Kelka.
Second.
We have a motion and support. A roll call, please.
All right, Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesich,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
and Winniwicki.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 6, citizen participation. We can try this, and if there's any citizens that are in the waiting room that would like to comment on any agenda items only that you cannot stand by for to ask any questions, now's the time to speak up and let us know. Michelle is checking.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
last call. Nobody? Okay, let the record show that nobody has wanted to participate in a closed session at this time. Item 7. Removed A&B, so it would be item C, tabled item, public hearing, establishing water and sewer rates for 2021. Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Again, this is the third year of the Plant Moran study. And you'll see then in the notice that's in your council packet, shows what the water and sewer rates would go up to relative to the current rate. This will keep us in line with raising enough capital money to pay off our bonds, do our needed capital stuff. If the city council so desires not to increase the amount of money they have for future capital needs, obviously you would need to raise the rates as high as was suggested by Plant Moran. And I believe it was 16.1% per year over 5 years on the water commodity side. So that's why when you talk about raising rates, that's what was suggested by the Plant Moran study done some 4 years ago.
Okay, any council people?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Lesage.
Yes, you and I have been around this water issue for a few years, and the Plant Moran study had a 5-year plan, which in the 5th year, the goal was to have a approximately $2 million capital improvement funding available so we could do pay-as-you-go capital improvements. If we were to this year delay some of that increase so that we looked at, say, only the commodity costs and pass-through costs from Great Lakes Water Authority and the Macomb County Wastewater Drainage District, we could bring those costs in and just pass them through and delay our capital improvement fund a little bit by a year. We have approximately $6 to $7 million worth of capital improvements this year, and we will be using most of that fund for down payment of the Utica project, or excuse me, the 14 Mile project. So it would not be, I would not be against reducing that increase this year, especially in light of the current financial and economic times we're going through. And I would ask that if Mr. Walters, sorry, I forgot your name for a minute, could come up with the exact cost of what the Great Lakes Water Authority and Macomb County Wastewater District charges would be for 2021. I would like to see that before we set a final rate.
That's very good thinking, Councilman Lesage. Thank you. Anybody else? Councilwoman Bransky.
Yes, thank you, Council Member Lesage. Can you clarify? So is what you're asking, it would be something less than 16% because it would just be the component of that 16% that includes those two parts. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, the Great Lakes Water Authority passed, had a 3.5% commodity increase and then a few $100s a month on the fixed charge. I would propose looking at just passing that through this year, and whatever the county is increasing for our commodity charge or fixed charge for sewer. And what we would be doing, by not raising that rate by the Plant Moran study recommendation, the remainder of that 16.9% increase that was in the model would be going towards our capital improvement fund. So all we're doing is we're delaying the increase in our capital improvement fund by a year.
When then would we have to, so we want to get the data, which would mean hopefully we'd get by the May meeting. Can we implement this after the budget year, or when do we have to do this by?
We would want to do it soon, but we could, so we can have a proper budget on the revenue side. But the costs, we already know what the costs are. It's just, what we would be doing is reducing the revenue side.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the GLEWA, the Great Lakes Water Authority. We have that information. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. As Mr. Lessig indicated, it's considerably less than the 16% that Plant Moran had in there. So, well, if you do the public hearing that you have with that, you can't do more, but you can do less.
Got it.
So that's not an issue. We'll set the public hearing. We'll have those numbers advertised. Then when you approve your rates at the May meeting, we'll have those rates adjusted accordingly. Is that right, Mr. Walters?
That's right. Yeah, and the GLWA rates went up just like Mr. Lessig said, about 3.5%. So got to double check on the sewer rates, that increase, but rather than 16.1, it would be closer to the 3.5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, sorry, Wayne, the thought being we set this public hearing for the May regular meeting?
Yes, you have the public hearings prior to the adoption of the budget.
Yep, okay. All right. Got it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, questions from council? Okay, can I get a motion to set the public hearing?
I'll make a motion. I will make a motion to set a public hearing on the proposed
2020-21 water rate?
right 2021 water rates and sewer rates.
The May meeting.
May 14th meeting?
May 14th meeting.
I seconded.
We have a motion and a second by Councilman Shornack. Any comments and questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Foster. Oops.
What?
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lessig,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Winawiki,
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you, Councilman Lessig, for looking into that and
Thank you.
addressing it.
Yes.
Item D is table item, city manager's annual review. Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, this is a tabled item. It's put on the table, so it would need to be removed from the table if the council wishes to take any action on this item this evening. If the council did nothing, it would remain on the table. If the council took it off the table by a motion and majority vote, then it would be open for discussion in terms of how to proceed on this item.
I'll make a motion to take it off the table.
We have a motion by Shornak to remove from tables. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Winawiki. Roll call, please.
Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Winawiki.
Yes.
Councilwoman Falco.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept for filing the final compilation prepared by our city attorney, which includes a written summary of the findings, conclusions, and goals in connection with the evaluation of the city manager for the 2019-2020 budget year in conformity with Section 9 of the city manager's contract.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and support. Any questions or comments on the motion? I see none. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
and Member Winawiki.
Yes.
7-0. Thank you. Item E, discussion of city manager's contract. Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same speech. This is a tabled item. If the council wishes to take any action at all on it this evening, you would have to make a motion and by majority vote, remove it from the table. At which point, if the council chooses to do that, I can give you an update on this, this matter.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to remove from the table.
Second.
I have a second by Councilwoman Blanky. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
I'm having technical problems, so, okay, yes.
all right, Member Shornack,
Yes.
Member Winawiki.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Denault.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. At the last meeting or so, some of the direction that was asked of me was to communicate with Mr. O'Neill regarding his existing and future employment agreement with the city as the city manager. I'm happy to report that I've had some conversations with him and the attorney that has drafted his agreement. And at this point, I believe we have an agreement on all of the principal points that I could think of at this moment. Those principal points being that it would be revised to a one-year agreement. It would retain the severance and notice provisions that he currently has. And it would afford, if the council ever made the decision to, it would waive any clauses that say that the decision to move forward with transition would in any way mean any kind of termination under the agreement. And in fact, in talking with Mr. O'Neill, he's more than happy to help down the road in the future when transition time comes. So we are in a position right now where I'd like to work on some language with Mr. Ferrand, the gentleman who's helping him with the drafting. We've gone back and forth a couple times, nothing major, just tweaks here and there, but I haven't had time to finalize anything for council this evening or for council to even consider for approval. And we'd like to do that at the May meeting if that's okay with council.
Sounds good to me. Comments, questions from council? Councilwoman Baranski.
I guess I just would like to get some confirmation from Mr. O'Neill that that is his understanding of where things stand at this point in terms of the discussions.
It is. Everything Don said is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Wayne.
I would make a motion then to allow the city attorney to work out the final details of the amendment to the contract with the parameters he discussed to present to us by the May 14th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on that motion? I see none. I'll bring it back for a roll call vote.
Okay. Member Baranski,
Yes.
member Blanky,
Yes.
member Carnegie,
Yes.
member Kalka,
Yep.
member Lesich,
He's saying yes, but we can't hear him.
He had to switch. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, that's fine.
member Shornack,
Yes.
member Winaweki.
Yes.
All right, 7-0.
Thank you, Don. Item F, discussion of recommended 2021 budget. Turn over, baby.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. John Walters and I have discussed the upcoming presentation. John is going to begin by giving an overview and talk about some of the fund balance issues and, hit some highlights. He and I will tag team where the best we can relative to any questions that are asked and any explanations. And if you have some questions where we don't have the answers at our fingertips, we'll make note of those questions, make sure that everybody has all of those answers way in advance to the May meeting, so that when you get to the May meeting, you will have all the information you need to move forward with the adoption of your budget. So with that, I would just turn that over to Mr. Walters now.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me tonight. I know I got a couple emails from some of you on some questions on the budget, and I hope I answered those as best I could. I put together another presentation. So at the last meeting, we went through a presentation of the budget with 9 mills for the special assessment for police and fire. At the last meeting, it was asked that I put something together with 0 mills for public safety special assessment, as well as make a couple assumption changes to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis. So
It's interesting.
those include
This will be interesting. Listen.
those include reductions in sales tax revenue that the state receives. So that's what comes through to the cities for state shared revenue is basically what's received in sales tax revenue. So I took the assumption that the COVID-19 crisis will be a 3-month crisis, and it will reduce state shared revenue in those 3 months by 75%. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Time will tell, but that resulted in a decrease in revenue. Also, interest rates decreased quite a bit, so that went. Interest rates went from, I think, 1.25% or 1.75% down to 0.25%. So I reduced interest income as well, assuming those rates are going to continue for the rest of the fiscal year. So I'll go through in your packet, I think you have another presentation, and I can go through that. I'm going to kind of go through it quickly because last time we went into great detail, and really the numbers that I just mentioned changed. I also included some additional slides that explain fund balance. So starting with the expenditure slide, that is exactly the same as last time. The total expenditures, $15.4 million are exactly the same. One thing I just want to point out on this slide is down at the bottom left, you see retiree health care at 2.06 million, and then pension at 2.7 million. That totals about $4.7 million, and that's fixed. So we can't touch anything like that. So the real budget, the operating budget for the general fund is about 10.6 million because the retiree health and the pension are fixed costs. We can't do anything with that. So that's just one thing I just wanted to reiterate from last time. The next slide is general fund revenues, and this is where it changed. So if you remember last time, general fund revenues were up around 17 million. Now they're down to 13 million. So the 9 mills for the PA 33 represent just under $4 million in revenue. And again, you can see some of the other changes. State grants went down $360,000. That's because of the state shared revenue assumption that I mentioned. And then that other category at the top went from 216,000 down to 96,000. A component in that other is interest income, and that went down about 120,000 because of the rates. Moving to the next slide. Now, this slide represents a snapshot of where things are anticipated to be at the end of fiscal 21. So at 6/30/21, we have, this is where, and I compared a 0 mil assumption with a 9 mil assumption for PA 33. So you have $13 million revenue, 15.4 million with 0 mills will result in a loss for fiscal 21 of almost 2.4 million. And you compare that to if 9 mills were assessed, you have about 17 million in revenue, the same amount of expenditures, that results in about 1.5, 1.6 million increase in fund balance. So given where we're at the end of fiscal 20, the year we're in now, total fund balance is going to be roughly around $6 million. That's total fund balance, including assignments, unassigned, and everything. So if 0 mills is levied, you'll have to eat into that by $2.4 million, which will leave a total fund balance of 3.667 million. Compared to if you had the 9 mills, you're adding more fund balance, which would bring your fund balance up to 7.622 million. Then I have an assigned portion and non-spendable. I'll kind of explain what those are, but council assigned 1.7 million at the March meeting, I believe, for future improvements. And then there's another $148,000, which is non-spendable. And then you can see the final line there, unassigned fund balance. That would be what's left, right? And the goal is to have 25% of your current year expenditures as your unassigned fund balance. And I have more slides that kind of depict where that would be in different scenarios. The next slide kind of explains the different fund balance types. So you have this non-spendable type, which is not spendable. It's not in a spendable form or legally or contractually required to be maintained intact. So basically, this is your prepaid assets. So these are assets that are paid for before the end of the year that you haven't received a benefit from yet. The largest prepaid asset is healthcare costs. So we prepay our healthcare costs in June for our July benefit, right? So at the end of the year, there's about $150,000 every year in prepaid assets. So that's part of the fund balance. However, you can't touch it because it's earmarked for July, right? Then you have restricted. So this has got to be done by council, by a resolution. You can restrict funds. Most of the restricted funds for the city and other cities are in other funds, like you have the local street, the major street. All those fund balances are restricted for those purposes. Typically in the general fund, you don't really have restricted fund balance. You usually either commit it or you assign it. So the general fund for Fraser does not have any restricted fund balance. Below that is committed. So this is the city council would have to commit a portion of fund balance by resolution for a specific purpose, and it can only be uncommitted by another resolution. Assignment and right now the city does not have any committed fund balance. Assignment is just a little bit more loose. I mean, fund balance can be assigned, it can be unassigned. The city manager can have authority to assign a portion of fund balance. You can have the finance director assign a portion of fund balance. So as of right now, we have $1.7 million assigned for future capital improvements. And again, that can always be unassigned at any point. So, and it doesn't have to be done by a resolution. And then unassigned is anything that's left over. It's unassigned. So, moving to the next slide. Now, this kind of gives a rolling fund balance picture of different analysis. So if you have 0 mills, what would it look like at the end of 21 versus 9 mills versus say 5 mills, which would be a middle of the road. So at the end of fiscal 19, you have $6.7 million. That's per the audited financial statement. So that's going to stay the same in all 3 scenarios. In fiscal 20, the amended budget has a loss projected for about $657,000, and that's going to be the same for each scenario, which would bring the ending fund balance at 6/30/20 to just over $6 million, and that's going to be the same in all 3 scenarios. So it's fiscal 21 that we're talking about, and we're looking at what should the millage be for the PA 33. And with the 9 mills, you know, you have the $2.4 million loss, which we talked about in the prior slide. With the 9 mills, you're looking at an increase in fund balance of about 1.5, 1.6 million. And then at 5 mills, you're pretty much break even with just a slight loss of about $200,000. So what does that do to your fund balance? Well, we kind of talked about at 0 mills, you're down to 3.6. At 9 mills, 7.6. But if you had it at 5 mills, you eat into that 6 million fund balance a little bit, and you're down to 5.8. Now you've assigned 1.7 for future improvements. We also have a non-spendable pre asset that's about 150,000 or 148,000. So if you take that away from your fund balance at 6/30/21 in these 3 scenarios, then you're left with the unassigned. And the unassigned is supposed to be 25% of your current year expenditures, which we've budgeted at about $15.4 million. So this graph here at the bottom shows what the unassigned fund balance would be in the 3 scenarios. So if you have 0 mills, you would have $1.8 million in unassigned fund balance, which would be 11.8% of fiscal 21 expenditures. If you had 9 mills, it would be 5.774 million, which would be 37.5% of total expenditures. And if you're at the 5 mills, middle of the road, you'd be at just over $4 million in unassigned fund balance, which is right around the 25%. Just above that, it's 26% of your expenditures, current year expenditures. The next slide is, and this was brought up at the last meeting, and this is from Tim's presentation from December. And he's kind of looking at this from from a starting point at 6/30/19. So he's showing the general fund balance at 6.716 million at 6/30/19. And then you can see in the red, he shows that loss, right, of $657,000. And then what's left is, if you add up the green and the orange, that's just over $6 million. Now the orange, he wants to target at 25% of revenues, and he's basing that off of fiscal 20 numbers. Now, fiscal 20 numbers you had $17 million of revenue because of the 9 mills. You also had $17 million of expenditures because we did a budget amendment to improve Fruhoff Street, which was little over $1 million, 1.1, 1.2 million. And then there was an additional contribution budgeted for contribution to MERS. So that was another $800,000. So total expenditures for this fiscal year in 20 was 17 million, but it included those extras, which really shouldn't include because those are over and beyond normal expenditures. So he's targeting 25%. He wants that to be 25% of 17 million is 4.2 million is what he's saying is your safe unassigned fund balance, which would leave 1.8 million to you can assign. And then you also have the non-spendable piece, which is prepaid assets. So that was his slide. Now I kind of recreated that slide on the next slide down because the numbers that he used for his slide, they changed. So the audited numbers came in just a little bit lower than what he had. So he had 6.716. It's actually 6.703. So I used that number. And then I also included the non-spendable piece of 148,000. And then my 25%, I used 25% of current expenditures of $15.4 million, which is about $3.8 million. And then that leaves the orange to be assigned, which is just over $2 million. And we have 1.7 right now assigned, plus another 150 for the non-spendable. So it's right now about 1.850. So that would leave a little bit more room to assign more fund balance using this scenario. Now that's at the end of this fiscal year at fiscal 20, right? The end of 6/30/20. That doesn't include what we're talking about for fiscal 21. This was just kind of to clarify the fund balance and where it's going. The next slide kind of outlines, the industry standard says maintain an unassigned fund balance between 20 and 25%. That's what they say. Now, the smaller the city, the higher the percentage. So Fraser is a relatively smaller city. You probably want to keep closer to 25% on hand. Like the county would keep 10 to 15% because it's such a large, their numbers are so large, it just doesn't make sense to keep that size of a fund balance on hand. So for Fraser, I think 25% is reasonable. 20 is reasonable too. But so here's kind of the numbers. Your unassigned fund balance at 20% would be just over 3 million. At 25%, it would be almost 3.9 million. I will also say that other industry standards include getting your defined benefit plan to at least 60% funded. Right now, you're at 52%. To get it to 60% funded would need additional funding of about $5.1 million to get there. Now, there's no need to put that in right now because the actuaries have the city on a plan, a contribution plan. So over the next 25 years or 20 years, the city will get to that funded spot if the markets cooperate, which, and then you also have another recommendation is to have your retiree healthcare plan funded at least 40%. Now the city's at 0% funded for retiree healthcare. But again, there's a plan in place that the actuaries have put, where if the city contributes a certain amount every year, it should get to the 40% funded point at 25 years from now, which is all the state is asking. Now that's kind of the revised presentation that kind of shows the comparison and how things are looking with 0 mills versus 9 mills and middle of the road with 5 mills. The other slides that are left, we kind of went through these before. I can go through them again if you'd like. or if you just want to start asking questions, I can try to answer those questions as best I can.
I have a question. Actually, I have a couple questions. So the email I had asked you about was with regards to, and I don't think you quite understood what I was asking, so I'm just gonna, I'll just start with the very first page. This isn't picking on anybody. I'm just starting on page 1, okay? So I'm trying to understand how, considering holidays, right? Holidays are basically the same every year. You get paid pretty much for the same holidays basically every year. Would that be a correct statement?
Correct.
Very infrequently is there extra holidays thrown in there, right? Because they're contractual. So I'm trying to understand how holidays in 2017-18 went from 4,600 to 44,000. Then in 2018-19 went to 6,563, and then budgeted for 2019-20 is $8,000. And that one's like, okay, so I'm gonna, again, this is just page 1 of these. That would be the city manager. Then if you go to technology, say, under that same exact thing, so for 2019, 2018-19, it was 5,000. So then it goes up to, I'm sorry, 18-19, it was 3,091. And then we have the original budget, then it goes up to 10 grand for the amended budget. I'm just trying to understand how, if it's holiday, how all of a sudden we're doubling down and tripling down. That's question number 1. That's what I'm trying to understand, is how, because that's, if you go through every single budget, it's the same every time. And I'm trying to understand why those have increased so much.
There were a few departments that I did notice that it didn't seem like the increase. It seemed like it increased a little bit more than it should have. But if I looked at it overall, the actually the holiday pay overall went down from fiscal 20, the year that we're in now, the amended. If you compare it to 19, it did go up, but it went up proportionate to the salaries, pretty much, with the exception of the couple departments that you mentioned, city manager, IT. Those departments, I agree with you. I think that those should be moved down a few $1,000s to be more in line with the other departments. And that's something that I talked to Wayne about. He's in agreement. So when we do a final budget, I'm going to tweak those numbers a little bit in those couple departments that didn't look right to me. So to me, if your salaries in that department go up 5%, the holiday pay should go up 5%. It's the same holidays. It's just that, you're gonna get paid more. So, but yeah, we're gonna shoot
That's
it up.
to be assumed.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like this was padded, and we don't want padding right now. Right now, padding's not a good thing in any of our budgets. And then my other question is, so on the one page where you have, it's basically, it says the city of Fraser combined notice of public hearing on increasing property taxes, that page. So you have your revenues, you have your expenditures, then you have net income loss, right? So I'm just assuming, because that's how I would read a balance sheet, that when you have it in parentheses, it's a loss, correct? According to you, okay. So, because, accounting in your world and accounting in my world, in the financial world, are complete opposites. I just want to point that out. So I'm trying to understand how the drug forfeiture and the gambling forfeiture, well, the gambling forfeiture in this has 19 grand, but then it is a negative for the drug forfeiture. And if memory serves correct, and Mr. Carnegie and Mr. Lessage and Ms. Blanky can tell you, there was many discussions on the fact that we were going to need our new fire truck, and I just want to know if we already got our new fire truck, unbeknownst to me, or did we already pay for it? I know it has going to take some time to be built. That money was being saved for that, and I know that was $500,000 in there. So I'm just wondering where that money went. Did it go to the fire truck that we're supposed to be getting a new fire truck?
We have no orders in for a fire truck at this time.
So where'd that money go?
Councilman Bransky?
Patrice, which page are you on of the budget? Just so we can all follow along.
Yeah, I'm on, I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm where it's got the breakdown of everything.
Oh, that's the separate.
Yeah, it's kind of a condensed version of everything at once. And
Oh, yeah, got it.
I think it's,
because it also says the city hall debt is a negative $391,138. We paid off city hall. We did roofs, but city hall debt was paid off. Am I incorrect in that statement? Or
no,
I'm
you're,
trying to understand how it's carrying a negative, how we're having a loss in here, is what I'm trying to understand.
all right, hold on, let me get there. Oh,
It'll be, well, this one's not numbered, so I apologize. It's not a number.
Does it say City of Fraser notice of public hearing for the
Yeah.
police and fire special assessment? So this is what
No.
we would
No.
publish.
No, it's
No?
City of Fraser combined notice of public hearing on increasing property taxes
Got it.
in 2020, 2021 budget.
So this is what would be published in the newspaper.
I'm thinking yes.
Okay. Thank
I'm
you.
not certain.
Oh, now I 100% follow you, and this
Okay,
does
you,
not.
you see where I'm like, why all of a sudden do we have negative? Why do we have a net loss? Especially in City Hall debt because City Hall's paid off. So therefore, it shouldn't be because I know we put on roofs, but that came out of capital that we assessed for that. And Nick, I don't know if you're on, Jason, maybe you. I don't know. Can anybody correct me if I'm incorrect? But I assume we did no longer have any City Hall debt, and I'm trying to understand where the money went from the drug forfeiture and the gambling forfeiture funds.
so on the city hall debt, I'm showing in the budget, I'm just looking at the detail in the budget. And I'm showing it's pretty much in the 21 budget, it's about break even. It's an income of $100.
Okay, but do you have that page for the City of Fraser combined notice of public hearing on increasing property taxes?
Well, we should be working right off the budget itself, to make sure everyone's on the same numbers and same pages.
Well, I
right?
understand that, but if we have contradicting information and this is
Right.
what's going to be published in the paper, Mayor, we have to make sure we have the correct information because if I was a resident, I'd be like, hey, wait a minute, especially our residents who actually, God love them, sit through our meetings and would be like, hey, we paid off the City Hall debt. I remember when we were there when we did that. So I'm just trying to understand how that would be a negative. I just basically what I'm trying to say is I want to make sure we're doing accurate numbers. We're not inflating anything. We're not deflating anything. We have to be, and Mr. Walters says nothing about you, budget. I just want to make sure that we are putting the correct information out there and that we have the correct information.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
We need to make very more so this year probably than any year because so many of our residents and so many of our businesses are being so negatively impacted by this whole corona thing that we have to be very good extra good stewards, because I would like to think we're always trying to be good stewards of our money and our fellow citizens' money, but especially now. So I want to make sure what we're putting out there is accurate. And I don't feel right now that they are because they're all over the map. They're not.
What sheet are you talking about,
The
Patrice? Which
sheet
one do you
that
have?
says,
All right,
City of Fraser, combined notice of public hearing on increasing property taxes and 2020, 2021 budget. It says a public hearing has been scheduled for Thursday, May 14th, 2020 during the regular city council meeting held at 7 p.m. within the council chamber.
Like this.
I see. All right, I got it.
Okay.
Yep.
So
So-
I'm trying to understand where the money went.
So if, John, if I may weigh in on this,
Yeah,
I think this last year was the last year. And this year, there's a very small portion for the city hall debt, but yet we had the trailing expenses of the last payment on the building itself. And that's why you show the revenues a lot lower than the expenses. And we still have a fund balance, if I understand, in the city hall debt, and also the street funds that paid the last payments to the bonds that we levied.
I didn't ask about the street funds though. I understood the street funds part.
all right.
Okay, well,
My question was about the drug forfeiture, the gambling forfeiture, and specifically the city hall debt.
All right, let me just say on the city hall debt first.
Mhm.
What's in the notice is incorrect. That's
Right.
last year's numbers. So that whole line needs to go away because there's nothing
Thank you, Mr. Walters.
Nothing in the fiscal 21 budget for City Hall debt.
Yeah, because I know the drug and gambling numbers are not correct. This is not right.
That's what I'm trying to say, but this is what looks like what's gonna be published, and
Yes.
that's not okay.
No, you're right.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Walters, on that. And now, and because I'm not on the specific page for the drug forfeiture and the gambling, that's my next big, because there was $500,000 in that.
Well, again, Patrice, I think this is not saying what the account has, it's just what the revenue and what the expenditures were, and that is it. That's
No,
all
this
it's
is saying
stating.
We're gonna run a net loss, Mike. That's what
Yes.
it's indicating.
I know. Well,
It's stating a net loss.
we can ask the director, he's online, to address it.
The drug forfeiture seems correct.
But where did the money go?
We have the money still.
Those aren't balances. It's not a
Yeah.
balance. That's not a balance. This is the
Yeah.
budget. The balances are not indicated in the budget.
That's just revenue and expenditures. It looks like drug forfeiture and gambling
So
forfeiture. those
basically,
are
because
correct.
we don't have our special units anymore, we're not getting any more money, so that's what you're stating. That would be a net loss.
Yeah,
Is that, okay, that's fine. I understand that part. I'm very concerned because we had all that money for that fire truck and I just want to make sure it didn't go south somewhere.
now there's
You're asking the right questions.
It's still
There's still about $500,000 in the drug forfeiture fund and the gambling forfeiture fund, about 950,000.
Yes.
Oh, even better.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I just want to make sure because I'm just like going, not cool.
City Hall debt, you're correct. That whole line needs to come out, and that's last year's numbers. So,
Okay, thank you.
and I'll double check all the other ones to make sure they're all correct
Awesome.
before we put this out.
Okay, and then back to the very original question I asked, which was the holiday pay. So you're going to reevaluate that and see that we're not over.
Yeah, and I noticed, there's a couple thousand maybe in the managers and a couple thousand in IT. The other ones looked okay, but I'll double check all the other ones too.
Yeah, if you would, because I saw it in about 3 or 4. So that's why I was really curious, like, how did that change?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to dovetail off of what Councilwoman Shornack said in terms of getting some numbers with regard to the vacation and the holiday pay that are listed on the itemization. I would like to get in some sort of the authority that goes with how those are determined. I looked at least 2 contracts today. I cannot find it. I do not have any idea, and it's like a wild goose chase because there's nothing that's set forth in at least 2 of the contracts that I looked at that tells me how the vacation pay is calculated. And if I took a look at what the city manager, that calculation for 13 paid holidays is over $600 a day. It doesn't seem right to me. So I'd like to find out what that authority is. What are we basing these payments off of? So I can get a better understanding why it's in the budget the way it is. And I'd also like to find out if in fact those were the payments that were made for 2017-18 that we have that show what the salaries were. I would like to get an itemization that shows us why for at least 3 department heads, there's a base salary of a certain amount, and then the actual payment or the actual amount that they make is somewhere almost $30,000 more. And there's really I don't have a clear indication how that's tallied. So I'd like to get a little bit more information about that because there's no overtime on these budgets. So I don't know why it's saying, well, we have a base salary and then we are having an amount that they're actually making. And it's almost, in some cases, almost $30,000. I don't know if that's because we're calculating 10,000 or 7,200 for holiday pay or 46 for vacation pay, but I'd like to get, for council to evaluate this. I think we need better numbers.
Can you give me an
And-
example of what you mean by that?
In 17-18,
Sure.
and that
So-
fiscal,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, actually, John was following up with Councilman Kolka.
go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I just so I know what you mean, wondering if maybe you can point me just to one example and then I can kind of figure it out.
Sure. So absolutely, and I understand that it's a little bit confusing, but so also too, I'd like to know exactly what the employees made last year, and I'd also like to know exactly what the employees made the year before, so we can kind of see what they made as opposed to what the budget is. Because, for example, if a person's base salary was 64,000, they actually made 93. I'd like to know where that money came from, how it was paid out, and I'd like to see that progression from 2018, 17, 18, 18, 19, 2021, that kind of thing. So that we can kind of see this, because when I'm looking at these, there's I don't have any idea why someone's base salary is one thing that's based on their contract. It's not listed in that is not what's reflected in here as the base salary. And then the amount that they actually made, if you add that all up, is almost $20,000 more in some cases. So, and I think that's across the board as it relates to the department heads and their salaries. I'd like to get an accounting of that, because it's not, I mean, it just is, I don't even know how someone could be paid $600 a day for each vacation day based. How is that? And when you look at the contract, it doesn't say anything. I've looked at 2 contracts today over the course of the last 3 days, and I cannot find where this calculation even comes from, let alone how it's determined.
I will say this on the city manager's budget. There were some adjustments made. There were parts of people that were in there in 17, 18. When Tim came in, he changed a lot of things around, and that's why you see that large number in 17, 18 and how it drops. I believe there's people cost moved. I don't want to guess, but I know that that was a lot of those things were changed, and we will give you an accounting of all of that.
And with all due respect, I took a look at your contract today because it's part of what we're doing, right? And I don't see anything about how it's calculated, how much you're supposed to get paid. I mean, and I understand it's a little bit different, but I've had to just have to take what I have learned or know with regard to how you do business. And when I'm offered a salary, that's what I make. I don't get FICA is separate and I don't get paid extra because I'm taking vacation days. And I get that that's different, but I looked through your contract today and I can't, it's completely silent. It says nothing about what you get paid. And for me, I'd say you should get paid based on what the salary is, divided it over 52 weeks, 40 hours a week. I mean, I don't know. To me, this is it's just hard to follow. And I don't want it to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. But I can't make heads or tails of, a couple of those things. And it's across the board, and there's no overtime in these budgets. So I don't know. And I can't figure out why last year the base salary was 105,000, but you actually made 123. I don't even know what that's based on. And FICA and Medicare, that's all extra. We're paying extra on top of that. I don't know. So that's my first issue. The second issue that I have is that I went through each of the budget presentations. And what I'm kind of concerned about is so we'll start with IT. There is a $150,000 expenditure for a software update. I do not see that anywhere in the budget. I don't see that was asked for in the proposed budget by John, and maybe I missed it. I didn't see that. I'd like to see, whatever the department heads need. I'd like to see an itemization of what each department head wants, so we can see what those appropriations are as it relates to increases. So we've got IT asking for $150,000 for a software update. We have the city clerk asking for payment. I don't even know because I tried to look at what's on the YouTube. And by the way, you can't read anything that's on YouTube. So when you're doing these things, please go back and take a look because the residents need to be able to see the numbers too. You know, and if it's not done right, it needs to be fixed. So it is done right. I could not find the amount of money that the clerk would like to have because now there's this benefit clerk position that I couldn't find the amount. I don't know what that amount is. I couldn't find it anywhere in the presentation, and I couldn't find it on the budget that was provided to us by John. And if I missed it, please direct me to the right. I would love to take a look at that. Also, too, there was a request for election equipment that we need, but there's no amount anywhere. So I don't even know what that is. So I can't even look at that appropriation to find out how much that's going to cost. So those are issues that we need to address. If you know whomever is asking, whomever is asking for additional monies, we should have an itemization that says that. That shows us a breakdown of here. This is the department head. This is what they'd like. This is what they're asking for. And for purposes of making sure that we have full transparency, everything that is put on YouTube, this was supposed to be so that it would cut down the time so that we wouldn't have to have the residents sit through the budget presentations. But they're not even, you can't read the information. So it's useless. So you're doing it, but when you go back and read it and watch it, you're not getting out of it what the intention was. So got to make sure that we're looking at those things because that's really, really important, especially for the budget process. I don't want to raise a mill if I can avoid it. But this is going to then mean that painstakingly we have to go through and look at exactly what it is that is we're actually paying so that we can make an accurate accounting going forward. I think for right now, that's all the questions that I had. I also was thinking that if as of right now, if there are individuals in the city that are not essential, they should not be working. They should be laid off. They should not be working. So I don't know if that means that there should be another review of everyone that has been working to make sure that in fact they are being essential, but it is stay at home. It is only essential services. So if there are departments right now that are completely closed, those people should be laid off. Every single one of them. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I had to lay off my own secretary. But that's the reality. The governor just took a budget cut. I proposed that I wouldn't take a salary for April, May, and June. I don't even know if that's legal, but if it is, I won't take a salary here. I won't take anything for any of these special meetings because to me, this isn't worth it. We are involved in something that is unprecedented. And it's very difficult. And I want to give the residents what they deserve. They deserve to see the money. They deserve to see the accounting of the money, every penny to the extent that we possibly can. I did want to make just one other comment. I just want to make sure that I have this correct. We for appropriations, John, if we can just kind of highlight that just for a minute. My understanding is that the Fruhoff bid came back and it's about $300,000 to $400,000 more than what we have budgeted for. Would that be accurate?
I'd have to look at the exact number, but I've heard that, yes.
Tim, or I'm sorry, Nick, do you remember what the amount might be? Was it 300 or 400?
Yeah, it came in just under 1.6.
Okay, just under 1.6.
Just under 1.6.
Okay. So we have assigned $1.7 million towards capital improvements, correct?
Correct.
And it hasn't been assigned other than to be in capital improvements. So even if we took part of that and we used that to finish Fruhoff, we took some of that and kept it for parks, we would have probably around $1 million that we could actually put back into the general fund for the fund balance that would help us so that we wouldn't necessarily have to raise mills. It's about 2.5 mills, right, per $1 million. It's $436,000 per mill, correct? Okay. So that would give us an extra $1 million. My next question has to do with the fact that I don't understand the motor pool thing. I have tried to wrap my brain around it a million times. I don't understand. Is there extra money in the motor pool? If so, how much? Can we use it to maybe, use towards the general fund so that we can also look at that as, some incentive for not having to raise very many mills this year?
There's
And if you
a,
don't know that question right now, that's fine. I'm just, just trying to talk about what the questions that I have.
yeah, there's a fund balance in the motor pool fund, and it's an accumulation that's can be used or should be used for replacing trucks and vehicles and throughout the city. So, but at any point, yeah, that can be moved back to the general fund, and then, then you'd have to move, start
So
saving.
that amount, if I understand you correctly, that amount is to help us with the 24 vehicles that we own, which would include about 5 dump trucks and some other utility vehicles, which those types of repairs are not cheap, right, Nick? I mean, those, from what you've said before, those repairs are quite expensive.
Correct. Yeah. Not only are the repairs expensive, we have multiple pieces of equipment that need to be replaced. And we talked to the fire truck that's soon coming. We have the utility truck that's going to be coming. We have our street sweeper that's desperately in need of being replaced. So as far as extra money, if there is some, they're much needed.
I see. So how much is in there right now? That's how much is in there now?
I'm showing about $1 million.
Okay, $1 million, but obviously we couldn't use all of that money because we have, as Nick just said, we have things that need to be replaced, or at least you're looking at trying to get replaced sometime in the near future. Would that be fair?
Fair, yep.
All right.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the motor pool is an internal service fund, and the different funds, major and local streets, general fund, water and sewer, all the using departments that use the equipment, they pay a Schedule C rate they actually rent it from the motor pool. That money goes back into the motor pool from all the different funds, so that at the end of the day, when a piece of equipment needs to be replaced, that money should be in the motor pool to replace it. So it's not just general fund money that's in there. That's water and sewer and major and local streets. So everybody's contributed that money to it. So, John said maybe a portion can be transferred to the general fund. Well, John, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't you'd only transfer back the money that's the general fund put in there, but not from the other funds?
You probably have to go back and look to see the accumulation of which fund contributed how much money, and then see which fund's entitled to what, you know what I mean? So.
Okay. All right. Well, we could cross that bridge if we decide we want to pull from there. Okay. Okay. I think that's all that I have for now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Colca. Anybody else? Councilwoman Moransky. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you. First, John, I want to thank you for doing the revisions that we had requested. I want to let you know and council know, unfortunately, the residents didn't get to see your budget presentation that you just went through with these slides, which I think is invaluable. And so I would request that these be put up somewhere, put them on the YouTube, put them somewhere so they can see the breakdown, because listening to the numbers, if I didn't have the charts, my eyes would glaze over. So that's the first thing I want to just follow up with, to make sure they get the actual numbers, because the reality is, following up with Councilman Kalka, the presentations that were done by the department heads and by our city manager were not the budget that we asked for. They weren't done off of a 0 mil budget, and they weren't done with the calculations that take into account COVID-19. So they're looking at a presentation that has 9 mils, and I'm hearing, oh my gosh, why, I thought 9 mils, you know, and it's like, whoa, we haven't even discussed any mills, and we all had agreed last time to start at 0 mills and go from there. So that's just my first thing. The question that I had, and John, you and I talked about this over the weekend, whether there were any, besides revenue from the state and then adjusting the interest, anticipated interest on our income, whether there were any other cuts that we could take within the budget as a result of COVID-19. So,
We talked about the recreation programs.
okay,
Some of that revenue, you know, I thought about that, and there could be another $20,000 that we should cut down on revenue because of lost, you know, recreation revenue and
okay,
the park rentals.
okay. And so before we get to actually doing additional things like that, I guess I want to ask Wayne, have you, and Councilman Kalka kind of touched on it, and I don't know the answer, and so that the public understands, we don't run the city day in and day out. The city manager does. He is making all the decisions about who is essential, who is working, what hours they're working, and all of that. And that's his job. That's what he's paid to do. My question to you is, what have you, if anything, and your department heads done, taken during this period to try to save the city money? Have you found ways to decrease spending, reduce staff, do layoffs, reposition staff to try to decrease overtime, or give breaks to staff to therefore decrease sick time? Has anything been done consistent with what's being done in the private sector, and even now the state with the governor laying off a section of the government? Have we done that yet, or have we not done that yet?
I have a presentation that I'm
Oh,
going
perfect. Okay.
to give an
So,
update.
perfect. And that's kind of the downside, because I want to obviously use that, because if we save $50,000 or $500,000, that's a mill, or that's a quarter of a mill, and everything we can do, because I know that my neighbors and my family, and you know, they've taken pay cuts, they've taken layoffs, and now we're going to ask them to pay this tax. So I appreciate that, and I'll look forward to that. The questions with regard to the budget that I didn't see answered, or I forgot to ask, I'm not sure. One of them was the salaries that are reflected in this budget presentation aren't actually the actual salaries that the department heads are getting. And I know that Lieutenant Pettis touched on the disparity in the salaries from 2018 to the present, because you weren't fully staffed. Is that correct, Director Pettis? So that was what explained his shift. Like, it was a pretty big one, but that explained it. It was a staffing issue. They didn't have enough officers. But why are we having a budget presented to us that has salaries that aren't what they're getting?
You have in some, I think in at least 3 areas, you have 3 individuals that last year put an adjustment, for the MML into their budget that the subcommittee was going to look at, and whatever, that's all part of that litigation that's ongoing. And that was just transferred over from the last year's budget to this year's budget, not assuming anybody was going to get anything. But in those 3 areas, that's why you'll see a disparity there.
Okay, so last year, I was on the other side of the table last year, obviously, and I thought that the council agreed to not have that as a budgeted item, but to have the budget reflect what the salary was. Am I incorrect?
You know, I'm just telling you what is there. I don't recall that.
Okay, so I would ask that our budget now reflect what our position is now, in terms of, so when we show salaries, it's what it is as of July 1st, 2020. It's not what it may be. It's not what it because it also could go down. I mean, I just was, all these emails we're getting about 88% of municipalities are anticipating having to make drastic reductions. So I certainly don't want to start with a salary that's over what it is currently. So that would be my first question, or my first request, I should say. I also saw when I was looking through, and I didn't look at it so much on line items, but the one thing I noticed is the health insurance. There was wide changes in some departments. The health insurance seemed consistent, and then other times it changed a lot. Is that, how did you calculate the health insurance expenses across the departments?
John, I will refer you to that. I will tell you that Mr. Sadowski put that budget together before, and we're self-insured on our health insurance. And I know that he has been shifting some expenses from the water fund into the areas where people are working back in the DPW. I believe when Tim got here, that the vast majority of the salaries in the DPW were in the water department because there was no money.
No, right. I guess I was talking about the actual expense for health insurance, like the line items. So for one department, it increased. I'm trying to find them. It was quite a significant increase. And in another department, it decreased. And,
Well,
and that was
again,
weird to me.
Again, there are those people that there are some people that opted out of the health insurance. Some people that opted in.
Opted in.
So when
Okay, got it.
So
Okay.
when you do that, those numbers which can change a lot.
All right. I would just ask if, since this was done last December, 'cause that's what you're saying, that we do the same thing and make sure that that's accurately represented across all departments for
That
6
would
months later.
that we will look at that, but
Yeah.
that would be accurate based on what people did over the last fiscal year, because typically we reload people's HSAs and stuff like that in January, because we got on a January year, both in terms of renewals for Blue Cross. We did that through the contract and negotiations. And so that's why you would see, it's going to be a trailing thing that you will see. But John and I will look at that more closely so that we can see, go to Tim's papers and see just, by department who changed over and why those numbers changed.
Yeah, and I see that because I just looked at 2 and it was like the clerk went down 4,600, but the IT went up 9,000. But they're both now calculated as 25. So it might be that it was an adjustment, like you said, over the years that Tim
I do know that there was some opting in and opting out.
Okay,
with these individuals.
Perfect. The next question I have is the public, on the revenue side, the public safety. I didn't get a chance, unfortunately, John and I talked about this. I didn't see an answer. The public safety kind of lumped all their revenue into one pool, and it was like 200,000 or something. And do we have any sort of breakdown of what that includes?
Which account or which fund are you talking about?
The actual public safety department. It's a charge for services, so it is in our revenue side. So it's page 2 of the budget, charge for services, public safety. This year's budget, they have 200,000. And so my question is, what is included in that estimate? And to date, like through January, we were halfway. So I'm just wondering, because I want to make sure, because that's a revenue, I want to make sure that that is not something that has to be adjusted for COVID-19 concerns.
So that's going to be, so if you look at 2018, you can see OUIL, cost recovery, accident reports. So it's broken out in much more detail.
Okay.
In fiscal 19, I think all those were lumped into just one account, charges for services, public safety. And now everything's just going through that one account. It's not broken out. And that's what it is. It's going to
got it.
Accumulation of all those different things.
That makes sense. Where is the
comment on whether or not COVID-19 will impact revenue? It might, but I don't know that it would.
Well, And all I would ask, not for you to comment today, Mike, but to consider that as we address this. Will revenue go down from OUILs, or I just didn't know, we didn't know what that 200 included. Where then is the revenue for the school liaison officer accounted in the budget?
I'd have to look for that.
Go ahead, Director Curtis. Go ahead, Mike.
Are you talking about the reimbursement from the high school?
Yes,
Correct.
it is, yeah.
I would think that would be on the revenue side somewhere.
That goes into the charge for service, which is all one account now.
So that goes into that 200,000.
Pretty much any money that we bring in, other than gambling or, I mean, there's a few exceptions, drug forfeiture, things like that, but pretty much any revenue from impounds to cost recoveries all go in that charges for service count. Yes.
Okay, so it actually includes more than what's on the budget in terms of line items that were delineated 2017, 2018. Is there anything else that it includes besides those line items and then the school liaison or the cops officer? And you can get back to us. I guess I'll task you with, can you let us know if there's anything else that's included in that collection side of the police? You're not obviously in the business of making money, but just so we know, it would be great if we could increase that revenue side to offset the costs. And that's kind of where another opportunity to look at is not just adjusting for COVID, but looking at opportunities to increase revenue wherever possible. The last question I'm sorry. The next question I have, circling back to the motor pool, and Councilwoman Calca touched on it. Is it possible that if we don't take money out of the pool, that this budget we adjust what is put into the pool? Because if I'm looking at this correctly, and I could be looking at it wrong, and I talked to Nick about this, because I look and it looks to me like for the last 3 years, we have kept almost $1 million as a balance at the end of the fiscal year. And so at what point are we gonna spend that money?
Well,
am I reading the balance wrong?
No, let me jump in, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. When you replace a Vector truck at $300,000, a street sweeper at a couple $100,000, you don't have a lot of money in there because you need a street sweeper right now. And when you get to the end of their life expectancy and you've got these big ticket items, you've got some pickup trucks coming in, the 5-yard dumps. And Nick, you jump in. I can't remember the cost of those off the top of my head, but I believe they were, I don't want to guess. Nick, you got some big expenditures coming out of there, and you need to, that's why you carry that fund.
Well, but now, when do we have those expenditures? We haven't spent this $1 million for.
Okay, let me finish for me.
Sorry.
So here's how it works. We get a Schedule C rate that comes from the state of Michigan, and it's from the same place from Public Act 51, which is our gas and weight tax and our registrations for our cars. That's where we get the money from. We get it based on the miles of roads and our population. They have a formula for it, about how we get the money. Now, with that, we get a Schedule C rate booklet that comes from them every year. And in there, they have all kind of equipment that are used by municipalities. Everything from a weed whacker to a 5-yard dump with a V-box, the salt spreader, radios, everything else. And they tell you how much you should charge as a rental rate to the using departments for those vehicles. So what they do is they're basing that basically on what a 5-yard dump would cost with all the appurtenances that are on there, that it would last 5 to 7 years, whatever they come up with, and we have to adhere to. So they take that total cost and divide it by the number of hours that that vehicle would be used over those 5 years or 7 years, the life expectancy of that vehicle, maybe 10 years. And then hopefully at the end of the day, you have that money in the bank. When that thing needs to be replaced, you replace it out of that internal service fund. Now they're real careful, cautious about that because they watch how we spend their Act 51 money that they give us. It has to be used on the roads, has to be used for specific purposes. That's what John Walter was talking about, restricted funds. Those are very, very restricted funds, and it can only be used for certain purposes. So if we're going to charge the Act 51 monies, they want to be sure that we're not gouging them. So that's why they make us adhere to those Schedule C rates. So while we'll carry maybe $1 million fund balance, if we were to take a look what it would cost to replace our entire fleet, I would guess it would be right close to $1 million. John, am I hitting that right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, those big ticket vehicles, could be $300,000 each. So it's good to have a safe balance in there, but and then as long as it's planned, all the purchases are planned in the future. What's contributed should roughly be the depreciation of these vehicles. So
exactly.
So I want to go back to my question, which was, when are we planning to spend the money? What is the plan? I mean, I'm looking, and you had at the end of 2017, you had 860,000. At the end of 2019, you had 1 million. You're projecting $1 million at the end of 2021. But the same budget, hold on, let me just make another point, because the same budget has zero capital improvements. We're not fixing roofs, we're not fixing infrastructure, but we're saving the money for the trucks, but we haven't been given any plans or requests or timelines. And we're obviously not replacing our whole fleet. That would be that would be
again, there's a again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's a replacement schedule for all of our vehicles. Also, enterprise is part of that. all of this is all together. So again, we know that we've got these 5-yard dumps coming that we've ordered. They're coming. We know that I'm sorry?
We ordered them?
Yes.
Oh, you already allocated that?
Yeah. Wayne, if I could, the 5-yard dumps have already been paid for. But as far as the other equipment, the street sweeper, that's been talked about, and so much for the fact that we've even done the quotes and the demos. It's ready to come as soon as we get through enterprise and that's finished and finalized. The next is going to be the street sweeper, and that's a $250,000 piece of equipment, just that alone. So as far as the money that's there and to be spent, there's 2 police cars that got to be replaced, the utility truck. And so the list goes on, and not that we're going to spend all that $1 million at once anyways. It needs to be built and saved for the vehicles that are coming. So as far as the plan is there, absolutely.
Right. But we're also planning on putting the police vehicles through the enterprise fund, ideally, right?
Correct, which will still come out of motor pool.
Right, but just so the public knows, that's 151,000 in this budget. Out of and this balance is after paying enterprise, after paying your estimated repairs, after paying all that. I struggle to be sitting on this money for 3 years, it not be spent for anything, and we don't even have anything pending in front of us. And the whole time I've been on council, there hasn't been any requests for equipment or conversation about equipment. So I just would like to have a little bit better guidelines, because if we could either decrease the amount from the general fund or transfer some back to the general fund. I get that we can't go to the street fund. I get that that's restricted, but anything I can do in the short term.
Something happened when Kelly got up and walked away.
Ooh, that was bad. I really.
Everybody
Maybe
else
can't
is
hear you.
muted.
Maybe you're muted.
Okay, hang on.
There we go. Okay, sorry. My last question is, I would like us to get realistic about a couple of the departments, and it pains me to say it, but we're not going to have, we talked about Parks and Rec and decreasing the revenue, but are we going to realistically have a need for that in a full, in the way it exists currently, as opposed to some modified form for the next year while we navigate getting out of the stay at home, what people are going to participate in, how they're going to participate in it, and then how much we're going to make people pay PA 33. So I would like to see some consideration for a discussion, and I would defer to Wayne with his years of experience. We went through this once before where we tried to, we tried to close Parks and Rec, then we didn't close Parks and Rec. And at one point, I know in the past, she was part-time, or it was a part-time program. I would like to have some consideration towards that, because I just don't, I have to be realistic, and I don't see that being something that's gonna be as solid as it's been going forward, in the short term anyway.
Okay. Councilwoman Shornack.
I just have a quick question
Sure.
for Nick, just a segue really quick. Sorry, with regard to the street sweeper, because I remember a prior discussion about the street sweeper and also the leaf flipper, whatever you want to call it, leaf sucker, that we were going to look before purchasing a new one. I thought we were going to look at what it would cost to outsource that service
Or shared
before
service.
purchasing a new one. Do you guys
Mhm.
remember? Some of you
Correct.
were
Yep.
before you.
Yeah, we have all those numbers, so all that'll be
Oh,
brought
do
in
you?
front of
Okay,
you. So.
Nikki, if
Yep.
you could throw them, yeah, because I know we wanted to see if it was worth it or not. So.
Oh yeah,
Just
contracting,
brought up the street
renting.
sweeper and you
Yeah.
said it too. So.
Yeah, we got all that as far as bringing in having it contracted out, renting a unit, purchasing a unit. So yeah, we'll have all that. All that's done. We demoed 5 units. We brought in 3 different vendors. So yeah, we've definitely done our homework and it's ready to go.
Cool. Yeah, if you could shoot that over when you get a moment, that would
Sure.
be awesome. Just so we could have it before, like just before you come to us about, the expenditure, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's
appreciate
definitely it's much needed. We put a lot of money. The unit, that we currently have is going on 20 years old. So
Oh
it's,
yeah, no, I know that one's on its last leg. I just want to make sure,
Yep, we have all
Okay,
that.
cool.
We did.
Sorry, I just wanted to segue since you brought it up, and I was like, wait a minute.
No, I love this conversation because it's definitely going to be coming soon and it's much needed. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I also have a drawing of a fire truck that would fit perfect in our fire bay to replace it, but it's about $500,000. So it's a lot of money to spend.
That's in the drug forfeiture fund, though. We
That's right.
put that money there for that purpose.
And just to piggyback off something that Amy and Councilwoman Kolka said is when I talked to some of the other community leaders on a call, what they've done with their departments that they've laid off people like recreation, which is zero anywhere that's going on and all that, they've actually, because of that, they know what the revenue was bringing in. They actually right away started laying people off to offset that revenue. So hopefully they'd come out of it as a zero.
Right.
There's still the insurance to pay and all that, but their city people have been looking at everything, and when they're going to make a cut somewhere, that it's a non-essential person, they look at that also as part of the cutting. If it's an essential person they don't need, they'll cut it if they can't find a place to put that person that helps, work something like that out. So there is other ideas that can be done. Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Winowicki.
I'm quickly running out of steam here, so I just wanted to throw some general comments out, a lot of which has already been covered and said. I too had a very, very, very difficult time following the YouTube slides, and then when I started comparing the slides that Michelle sent to all of council, which were much clearer and then I could read them, I had a difficult time in some of the departments not following the same format. When you're looking at most departments having the format of expenses from 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and then first draft, second draft, And then you get into some departments not having any part of that, using what appeared to be different spreadsheets, was very hard for me to start drawing some conclusions and looking at some accurate numbers. Also looking at electrical costs. It appears that in almost every category because we talked about, with the LED transformation that we did across the entire city, street lighting included, it appears that budget-wise, according to the slides, our electrical costs went up or are forecasted to go up, and it shouldn't be. It should be going down, especially with the type of LEDs that we put in and the significant savings that we're going to have. So I would just encourage that we go back and look at, and it was mentioned that there were certain salaries that were budgeted last year, and now, and I think Wayne alluded to, well, we just carried that over to the next. We can't sit here and look at trying to draft accurate numbers of what we really need to move forward with PA 33 if we're looking at, well, this is what we wanted last year, and so we're going to carry that over, and let's base the mills based on what we wanted last year and this year, and so we have to get a little bit more accurate on that. And it, in almost every category, I know that you talk about, or it's talked about that each department pays into the motor pool based on the vehicle, but there are some departments that would never use a street sweeper. There are some departments that would never use a 4-yard dump, but yet we've got repairs and maintenance on their fleet vehicles. And if we've got this big deal going with enterprise, it was my understanding in all the presentations that I've heard that repairs and maintenance are also covered under the enterprise agreement. So why are we budgeting that? And why are we budgeting an increase over those repairs and maintenance year over year? So those are all the questions that I have, all the comments that I have. And again, I apologize, but I'm quickly running out of steam here.
Understandable. And you're right on the format. I think that was one of the things that I simply said last year is we have to try to use the same formats. I mean, it's so complicated, but it's sometimes it's hard because it's easier just to move things from sheet to sheet.
Mr. Mayor, if I may jump in on
Sure.
some of these line items there, you call them repairs and maintenance. Maybe that's a misnomer, but that's a 932 account where they make their payments for the lease on their vehicles. And so using the term repairs and maintenance that's probably what the uniform chart of accounts calls that line item. John, I could defer to you, but the point is that's not really just repairs and maintenance. That's more the lease on their vehicle. Their department's paying for their vehicles to the motor pool out of that. So while they call it repairs and maintenance, when it's a lease on a vehicle or your payment for your vehicle, it's not repairs and maintenance. But let me drill down into that and see exactly what the uniform chart of accounts calls that.
Yeah, the only rebuttal I would have to that is that, and let's just take the example of a department having a focus assigned to them. We're not going to be paying $16,900 for a focus for 4 years.
No,
that's the only rebuttal I would have to that.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you on it. I'm just saying that about the title of that.
Yeah.
That fund, and that's another thing that Nick and I had already talked about, the charges from the motor pool, and we're going to look at that a little closer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else on comments and questions?
John,
go ahead.
Oh,
hold on.
Okay, never mind. Nope, go ahead.
I just have one concern.
Can barely hear.
Now you can.
Okay. My one question would be directed to you, Wayne, relative to, we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think the mayor just mentioned that the other cities are saving monies going to the insurance. Did you mean like unemployment?
They use that term. they still had to pay insurances, but I don't know. You know,
Okay.
claim insurance or was regular insurance.
Okay, well, to my point, I've heard a bunch of different stuff. I wondered how you are paying the people that are off. We kind of discussed it last week, but if you get a chance, that's my concern, just to see a figure there, if we could save anything that way. So it doesn't have to be tonight. An email would be good. Is that okay?
Yes, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. I have got a presentation, just a short.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Hey, John, looking at some of our other funds like local streets, major streets, and those are all based on Act 51 money.
Correct.
Do we anticipate a reduction in our Act 51 money in the next fiscal year due to the COVID-19 and reduction in travel since no one's going anywhere?
That's a good question. I think that's determined annually. By the state legislator. I don't know if I think part of it's gas tax, right? So
Yep.
that's obviously down. So yeah, I would think that those monies we'd see reductions there too. Now I don't know. I mean, I can estimate something there as well, kind of using the same the assumptions as I did with state shared revenue. But
that would be basically a guess at this point. And for the local streets and major streets, it would just reduce the amount of money we had to spend.
Correct.
And we may have to delay projects or something. So
right.
We don't have any. We have expenses that we got to cover at some point. But and then on ambulance, this is from Mike Pettis, if he's there somewhere.
He's here.
Okay. Oh, there you are, Mike. Ambulance, I see we have quite a bit of money in the ambulance fund. We have not paid for the fire truck or the ambulance yet? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. And do we have any other capital expenditures we're expecting in the ambulance arena in the near future?
No capital expenditures. Obviously, our expenditures have gone up since this COVID. We've made a lot of purchases. I'm not counting on getting that revenue back, but we're certainly taking part in that grant to get reimbursed for that. So we've made some pretty substantial purchases, especially compared to other months. But really, the ambulance at this point is that's the major one. And we did add that fifth medic here a year ago back.
Yeah, we did add that last year. As far as, just out of curiosity, we were talking about selling the ambulance, the old ambulance when we got the new one. Are we thinking of keeping that around for a while, or just because of the additional runs we might be experiencing? Just to make sure we have the backup, or are you?
Yeah, we're actually.
We agreed we're going to keep that ambulance back.
Okay. Thank you. I probably forgot that. So, other than that, I think a lot of the other questions were asked, and then I'm just looking through my spreadsheet here.
Okay, we have to take.
Okay.
He's got to change the CD on the recorder.
So we take 5.
Yes, take 5.
Thank you.
Are we almost ready? Are you getting everybody back on your end, Mike?
No, missing Kathy. She's hard to keep a hold of.
You did say 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. You guys keep changing boxes like tic-tac-toe. It's not fair.
Oh, that's funny. Mine stay the same.
Yeah. It's like shuffling the deck.
Are you on the iPad or are you on a computer?
Computer.
Oh, that's weird.
So you got kicked out of the right corner and went to the left corner, or vice versa.
Just when you got used to where we all were.
Okay, Kathy is back. I think we have everyone back. Okay, we can go ahead and get started.
We don't have Dave yet.
Oh, we may have lost Dave.
No, he's there. He's just not.
Okay.
His video's there.
Right.
He didn't shut us off.
Yeah. He's listening. Was there any other questions on the budget at this time?
I had a couple more. I had a couple more things that I just wanted to cover.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, this again for John. With regard to healthcare, I believe that Tim had. We used to, for our self-insured fund, we pay as we go, and we weren't budgeting that on what Tim Sadowski referred to as an illustrative rate. Is that the term? Basically, that we budget for health insurance based upon a rate for a family and a rate for an individual employee.
Illustrated rate, correct.
Whatever, however you pronounce that, illustrative, that's what he referred to it as. But we basically come up with what a premium replacement or substitute would be, and we apply that to the budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that comes directly from Mankin Vance, the agent. So he'll calculate it and give it to us. And there's a, if you're single, it's one rate. If you're married with a family, it's another rate.
And overall in the general fund, the three primary accounts or departments that went up were legal costs, retiree health care, and I believe insurance. And many of the other accounts or departments stayed the same or virtually no change. And then there were several that went down, including like DPW, where we aren't doing Fruhoff this year and things like that. Would that be accurate?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I think that's about all my questions for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Wait, what did you mean that we're not doing Fruhoff this year?
No, we're not. It's not in the budget we're discussing. We already budgeted for that.
Thank you. Okay, I just want clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's fine. We're not doing, but that in this year's budget is the proper way to put it. Thank you.
Last year.
Okay, any other budget questions? Okay, so since this is an online meeting, I would suggest and recommend that anyone who has their questions, you know what they were or what you want follow-ups, is just to follow up with an email to Mr. Walters and Mr. O'Neill, just to make sure that there's nothing lost with communications, and this way you have it where you can, get exactly what you're asking for. And if you need assistance or you need help getting anything, then let me know. I'm talking to Wayne all the time on the phone back and forth and try to not to come in here as least as I have to. So, but it's best to document what you want and make sure you guys get what you want.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I've made some notes. I'm sure John's made some notes, and the other people have. And what I'm going to do is memorialize these notes and send them out to everybody. And
Okay.
you can add or subtract to them.
Okay.
So that we make sure that we're looking at those things that you want.
Yep. Either way is fine. Yep. Absolutely. Thank you. Councilwoman Kalka.
I just have a comment, I guess. Wayne, you said that you had a presentation you wanted to give us with regard to layoffs or city services, essential services.
Well, it's not a presentation, it's just an update.
Okay, is that like, are you going to do that at the end?
I can do it now. I mean, I was just going to tell you what, some of the things that, we're talking about the employees and the essential and non-essential and recreation and all. I'm just going to kind of touch on those things. I have touched on them on my weekly updates where we've been doing those press conferences, so to speak, and talking about the fluid situation. And I would kind of hope, I know Don's on here, and kind of hope Ryan would stick around. But yeah, this has been a mess, and it's well. If you want me to go through it, I can.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any objection to allowing Mr. O'Neill to do that now while we're talking about the budget? Because otherwise, I have something that I wanted to discuss.
Sure. No, I don't have any problem with that. Adding it just before.
No, I mean, just having him do
Sure.
his presentation now. Okay.
No,
fair
sure.
enough.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's kind of all related to the same thing. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to reiterate by indicating that the decisions we have made and will be making are done with limited information and may have to change as we learn more. We have been keeping out in front of this crisis and responding accordingly. Again, I have determined and identified our essential personnel within the organization in conformance with the governor's emergency order. Essential administrative staff, which includes myself, Kelly Dolan, and Michelle, are coming to work every day in support of the public safety first responders and the Department of Public Works. We are, as well as elections. We are on call 24/7 and stay in constant contact with key personnel, and we have been communicating our activities to both you, the mayor, and the council on a daily and weekly basis with a combined staff and informational meetings. As it relates to the employees, I had a phone conversation today with Manco Advance, and we're looking at testing for antibodies for all of our employees to see just exactly what employees may have had the coronavirus or whatever. We're trying to be proactive on this. So we're looking at having Beaumont coming in and testing all of our employees for antibodies, because that's very important to show going forward who may have been exposed, who may have had it and didn't know it, who had it, what antibodies they have. This is something they're even talking at the state and national level. Again, I've closed all municipal buildings to the public and extended the closing through the end of April. We are conducting essential administrative function as required, and we are doing social distancing and reducing the number of people within one area. We are taking everyone's temperature twice a day, and employees are to stay home if they are experiencing any symptoms of COVID-19. We have platooned our DPW departments into two shifts, working one shift. One shift is working now 3 10-hour days a week, while the other one is working 10 hours days a week. Then we're flip-flopping the next week, where the two work 10-hour shifts and the three work 2, because we've got to keep the guys apart. We are requesting all personnel to be on call during normal business hours. We have additional employees on call in the evenings and weekends for emergencies. Seasonal employees are slowly coming back for cutting grass and other things that we need for them to do. Full-time clerical union employees are working 2 days a week, and a part-time clerical and public safety, and the part-time clerical and public safety are coming in and doing what is required and then leaving. Part-time clerical and the other areas have been laid off. The DPW superintendent and the assistant are alternating weeks, the same as the platoons, and are 24/7 call. Building assessing departments are being manned by our contractual department heads, with staffing as required under our contracts with them. Our rental housing inspector is working and is coordinating the return to full operation. Recreation is closed to the public, and Christina has been working from home on a part-time basis while she is finishing up her maternity leave, and Julie is working from home and visiting the office on a limited basis where needed. Plans are being made for when the governor's orders are lifted and we can open up these operations. The full-time clerical person in recreation is not working at this time. Employees may be using a combination of personal time off along with new guidelines associated with COVID-19 acts approved by the federal government. Um, the federal government passed the Families First legislation that dictates what we can and cannot do with employees and the effects of COVID-19 and paid time off. Don Denault, Ryan Fatuzzi, our labor attorney, and I have been meeting by phone conference, making sure we are in compliance with all applicable federal and state requirements. This is a fluid situation and regulations are changing almost daily. We have been monitoring what other cities are doing, and most have asked their employees to stay home and stay safe, and they are compensating their employees with full pay without using any of their leave banks. We are doing a combination of these things and are trying to make sure we are treating everyone the same to the degree that we can. Some cities are paying hazardous pay to their first responders and those supporting them that are working. This ranges from one-time bonuses to increased hourly rates for hours worked during this emergency. We are staying extremely busy with coping and complying with the governor's order and the extension to the end of the month, as well as the increasing problems associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. This has been occupying most of our time. We continue to be inundated with the fluid situation on the COVID-19, and this has been an incredible challenge, but everyone is rising to the occasion. One of the other things that we're looking at, um, let me finish this. I have discussed the many things I am doing with the city council and city attorney, Don Donat, who has indicated that under this emergency, that I have the authority to do what is necessary to maintain the operations of the city and to protect both the citizens and our employees. We are in the process of reviewing our operations at our municipal buildings so that any modifications that may be needed prior to reopening can be effectuated. We just got a quote on putting plexiglass on the counters inside City Hall. We have to have some barriers up. It's not, we got a new normal and we're looking at that. I'm going to be talking with Christina about what we're going to be doing in recreation going forward. We got to see what the governor states about how much longer this is going to go on and what the new normal is going to look like. Is she going to, what can we do in the recreation department? They're talking about maybe opening a golf course. I mean, we don't know yet until we can definitively see how her order is going to be and what it's going to be. It's going to dictate a lot of different things. Um, so we do know that we've run in some wires now for IT so that we can have some additional spacing within our workstations so that we move computers a little bit and keep our distancing and have the counters where the people can't sneeze on us and breathe on us and have plexiglass with a slot where they can put their permits and plans through. And we're going to be looking at any number of things, more sanitizing stations, making sure people use the drop box as much as they can. Again, we are emptying the drop box twice a week. We're letting the stuff sit over the weekend so that if there is any viruses on it, there's a half life to this stuff. And hopefully that when we do get and start looking at this stuff 3 or 4 days after we've emptied the box, that we don't have any problems with it. So we need to have the people in our finance department. John is working. He came in the other day. I was surprised, but John has been working remotely. Most of our employees can't work remotely. They have to come in and to help support and pay the bills, and that's the people that are coming in the finance department. Um, Nobody's at recreation except for where Julie might come in once in a while and uh, do some stuff with some flyers and maybe work on some of that stuff from home. But we really don't want anybody in that building when there's nobody there. I look at that as a problem. Um, so are we laying people off? Yes. Are we going to furlough people? Yes. Are people taking advantage of the families first? Yes, we have people doing that. So uh, we have people in our city that are working a couple of days a week and getting paid full time. So we want to make sure that other people that are working are not working, that we're compensating them accordingly. We were going to wait and see, till the end of this month and see what the governor does. Once we see what she's going to do, then we'll probably effectuate some additional layoffs. Uh, and we, again, it's fluid, and we're going to do what we can. As you know, under these acts, if you can't come to work because you're closed down, you can avail yourself to some of these acts. I will tell you, and I'm sure you know this already, and not get into detail with these acts at this late hour, but cities are not getting reimbursed for some of this stuff, even though it's in place and we have to adhere to it. Now we're trying to lobby so that this next go around, when they do the stimulus or whatever they do, then maybe we can get some of these monies for reimbursements. But these first go rounds are not, they've held us exempt, but yet we've got to adhere to the extensions of what they call the family medical leave under the Families First. So again, I have been on the phone with Don and Ryan, and we are making doubly sure that we don't violate anybody's rights under these laws. We're erring as again, we're erring on the side of the employee so that we can make sure that everybody is being treated as fairly as we possibly can under these fluid situations. So, I think that's why some of these cities, which are doing the same things that we are doing, are coming forward with these bonuses or whatever you want to call it for these first responders because they're here every day. Now, there's a lot of philosophies amongst us managers and about that. So I'm not going to go into that, whether I agree or disagree or anything like that. But each city's looking at that on their own basis, and that's up to them. But again, I think they're looking at that, what's fair, what's equitable with this whole damn thing. And I'm going to call it a damn thing because this is my first pandemic, and I hope it's my last. And again, it's we're going to have to take a hard look at recreation. If we're not going to open, what can we do? We're still going to be faced with a lot of those same things that we faced before with the CDBG and stuff like that. But well, we're going to have to revisit all that. And Christina, she knows what that is, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it, and we'll come up with a plan. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor, on that, members of the council.
Thank you, Ryan.
So I just wanted to respond. I know this is probably not a popular position, but I know that this summer is going to be a lot of the same. We might be opening, slowly, but I just don't see how recreation is going to bounce back. And even if it does, I mean, the numbers are so outrageous still. There's just no way. I propose we just shut it down completely at this point because there's no reason for it, and open it back up late fall so we can start again next year. The whole idea is there's not going to be a full opening where we can continue to do what we were doing. The weather's going to get nicer. People aren't going to gather like they did. It's just not going to happen.
I totally agree.
So I think, I know it's not easy, but whatever the term is, layoff, furlough, I don't see how at this point that this is, it breaks my heart really. Cause I mean, nobody wants to be in this position. 100%, nobody does. But, you know, whatever we can do that's minimal, I mean, the governor doesn't want us cutting grass. I know that that's controversial. I get it, but that's her rule. I mean, and we're a municipality and we're over there cutting grass. You know, I have friends who can't cut grass in the residential neighborhoods and then you have people hiring other quote unquote black rogue companies that'll do it because it's, I get that, but that's what the governor wants you to do. I know you don't like it. I get that, but it's just like a police officer. You don't always like the rules, but you should follow them. And for God's sakes, it's not that big of a deal. You're talking about a few weeks. I mean, from what I hear, the weather hasn't been great anyway, and you're not usually, I mean, it hasn't been great anyway in terms of the grass being so long. So I don't understand what the big deal is. And to me, I mean, we have to follow what the governor says. We are a municipality, for God's sakes, or for goodness sakes. I mean, that to me is, that's a no-brainer. I mean, whether we want to enforce it, we see that, we don't have to talk about that. But what I'm saying is that as a municipality, we should be following her rules. And, I don't want to shut down Parks and Rec, for sure. I don't, or even the senior center, but we can't get old people together. No way. I mean, not now, not over the course of the summer. I mean, we need way more research and more data and more information before we start getting people together. And I know it kills us. I know it does. But, I think that that's the best way to go at this point. There's no reason to prolong it. I mean, she's going to probably extend the order tomorrow 2 more weeks at least. At least. I mean, there was another 1,000 cases, I think, the day before yesterday and 1,200 today. So, I mean, it's, while, it is getting better, we got a long way to go. So, I mean, at least for me, I think that's kind of the thing we need to be doing, at least from that perspective. So I do appreciate, the things you are doing. I know this is uncharted territory and it makes things much more difficult, but we gotta trim everything we're not using. If it's not seriously an essential service, people don't need to be there. If we have to lay them off, if we got to do a furlough, whatever it is. I mean, I don't like it either, but that's what the governor wants. Those are her stay-at-home order rules. So we got to do it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Baranski.
Yes, City Manager O'Neill, I just have a couple questions. And it may be something that you don't have right now, because I was looking for a little bit more substance in terms of, do we have any revenue that we are going to save at this point? Because if we have laid off an employee, the one perk is that the government is picking up all expenses in that regard. So that results in a net savings to the city. I didn't hear, other than I didn't hear anyone who was actually laid off other than maybe some part-time workers. Is that the status that we're at right now?
That's correct. Non-essential part-timers.
Okay, but there are, other than the public safety department, which is not changed at all, every other department is changed in some capacity, whether it's working reduced hours, working from home, a combination of the both. Is that correct?
Basically, your 2 biggest departments are the DPW and the police department. They're deemed essential services.
Well, but the DPW is not working 40 hours a week. But
they're to the degree that they can, they're in full operation. They're just platooning different days. They're here now 5 days a week, where before they were 4, now they're 5 days a week. They're just.
Why are they not 6 days?
I'm sorry?
Why do we not do them 6 days now that we have spring things that can be done?
We're doing them 3 days and 2 days and 3 days and 2 days.
So 20 hours, 30 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours.
That's correct.
Are they getting overtime if they come in on their non-scheduled days?
They don't come in on their non-scheduled days unless they're on call. And so,
okay. Are they getting overtime?
If they come, I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Well,
I
that,
would doubt,
okay,
if they come in after hours, they're getting some, if they come in after hours and it's on an overtime basis, they would get paid, but I'm not, I can't answer that question.
no, and you can give us the answers later. Yeah.
Right.
Because
I know where you're going with that. It's
well, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just trying to figure out, these are the questions we're getting. We are being asked what the city is doing, like businesses are doing. Businesses
Right.
are reducing salaries, businesses are reducing hours, businesses are reducing people. And we are being, and I've made it crystal clear that's your domain. And I just want to be able to tell the residents, I want you to tell them what specifically we're doing. And then for my purposes, I just want to know, as horrible as it is, the bonus is if we save, the governor said she's going to save $5 million by laying off those workers for 2 weeks. So how much are we going to save by whatever actions we take? Because that savings goes right into next year's budget. So that's where my question comes from on a personal level.
Well, related to what you were asking, Amy, Wayne, maybe you can help, because my question that I got from people from the last statement about the DPWs is if they're working 20 hours, are they getting paid for the 20 or are they getting paid for the 40, even though they're working 20?
They're getting paid for the 40.
Okay. And they're switching off, then the next week they'll do 30.
That's correct.
But they'll get paid for the 40 also, vice
That's
versa,
correct.
the switch.
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilwoman Kolka.
So I guess the white elephant in the room is why is that? Why are they getting paid for 40 hours when they're only working 30 and 20 hours?
Because, all right, could I call you on that, or do you want me to?
Well, I mean,
the federal government exempted local governments from reimbursements, like the small business stuff and save your paychecks. And I believe that what they thought was, when they exempted us, is that we have our revenue stream from taxes, and they didn't see a need to reimburse us for that type of stuff.
You mean reimburse the city or reimburse the people who are being laid off?
The city.
Okay. But we're saving the wages, correct?
Well, here's the point. The point, as I understand it, they want to be here. They want to come to work, and it's not their fault that they can't come to work.
I'm not following that logic. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Well, but I think that that's a discussion that we need to have. This, I can't articulate it real well right now.
Well, with all due respect, if you are being paid to work, you're paid the hours you work, even if you've got to go down to an hourly basis. I don't know anybody who gets paid 40 hours who's only working 20.
Again, I wish Ryan was here, and there was reasons for why and I don't want to misspeak myself right now. I with all due respect.
And in all fairness,
there's a reason why we're doing this.
Okay, and in all fairness, for the residents' sake, this is why I'm asking these hard questions, because I want them to know why we're paying people 40 hours a week when they're only doing 20 or 30 hours worth of work. I also want to make sure that our loyalty is to the residents in a lot of ways, in terms of giving them good, accurate information about what we're doing. And at this rate, if we don't need them to work those hours, then it helps our residents to know why. And if we have to lay people off, we have to lay people off. That's it.
I understand.
I know it's hard. It's a hard decision. Believe me, I've been here long enough to know we've done some very hard things here. But we have to do these things, as difficult as they are. And if we don't get reimbursed by the governor, we're still saving on the wages. That's a plus. That helps us. Right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
technically I could have them work 5 days a week, all of them. But you don't do that under this pandemic. You don't do that. They're essential service, so we need them. So this is our decision to do this to protect them and make sure that we've got a workforce to come to work.
Well, nobody said they weren't available. You were only paying them for the work that they're doing, Wayne. Right?
Again, we are doing this to protect them and to help us. It's for both of us. It's for the organization, for everything.
I guess I just don't see where you're coming from. I apologize.
Again, and maybe I don't know that I can articulate it well now, but I promise that I will call you and articulate it as best I can. I will call
Well, make
everybody.
sure when you do, though, that we put something out there for the residents, because I don't think they understand either.
I will, and I can't articulate it very well right now, believe me, but it's for the organization, it's for us, it's for their protection, and it's for us to maintain our workforce and in a safe manner because they're essential. Just like Mike Pettis has got all of his personal protection equipment and everything that they do. And
And I agree with you. The PSO, the fire department, the ambulance, I truly get that. I understand that. But they're not working 20 hours and being paid for 40. That's the difference here. The difference is you have people, you're not firing people, you still maintain your workforce. Okay, you're maintaining your workforce here. You just pay them for the work that they do. And you owe it to the citizens to make sure that the city is being diligent in that, right? I mean, I'm not saying anything that isn't expected, I think.
Mike, you want to jump in there?
Hold on.
I'm
Councilman
talking about
Grant-
Pettis.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to that, we're asking these employees not to work. We have essential work. I'm talking about the DPW. Maybe I can, I don't know, maybe explain it the exact same way as Wayne, but there's certain work that has to be done. They get their work done, just kind of like my secretaries. They get their work done and get home because I don't want them to get affected. We don't want the DPW employees to get infected. There's bonus things that we all do. From secretaries, and then there's essential things they have to come in every week for and get done in order for us to keep moving forward. There's other things that they do, like answering the window, answering calls. We can have somebody else do that, but we have an obligation for our DPW and every employee and during this, because the governor requested us to. If you don't have work to do that's not essential, you shouldn't be at work. Because we're exposing people. We have people together. As much as you try to, people get together. You expose them. And the thought is that we want them to come back to work. We have to function as a city and continue. But I know the DPW is like the police. I can't pay a policeman 20 hours a week. They're contractually obligated to get paid their salary. And they are too. And we're saying, hey, we want you to work. Get your essential work done and go home because I want you to come back to work tomorrow and not be infected and not spread this. And that's why they come in and do that. And same with our secretaries. I have to have them come in certain days to get things done. And they do work from home and they do essential things that we have to get done. But if it's non-essential, if it's things that you can do when you come back to work and file and your clerk duties, do it when you come back, when it's safe to be back at work.
So then my question then to you, Mike, would be, why are we paying somebody if they can get the job done in 4 hours? Why are we paying them for 8 hours of work? They're not there. It's a different scenario when you're there to answer phones. You got to be physically present. That's not what we have here. And we have this situation because of what's going on. So why are we not tightening up what we're doing so that way? I just don't understand. I really don't. You don't have people coming to work you don't pay them for more than the jobs that they do. I mean, maybe I'm missing it. I mean, I can understand maybe the first 2 weeks as this was a fluid situation, but we're now 5 weeks into this. If the secretary is coming in and working 3 days a week, 5 hours each day, that's what she should get paid for at this point. That's it, nothing more. And if she has to apply for unemployment because the city, we just raised taxes for the last 2 years. I have a huge, we're underfunded. I mean, we have to be aware of this stuff. I'm not trying to be the bad guy, but we have to be aware that we have to be aware, okay, that this isn't our money. This is the people who are watching these, this is their money. And basically, I just think we really got to watch what we're doing with the money, and we have to pay attention to it. That's not fair to the residents who are paying these bills. And it isn't fair to them. Like I said, if this was the first 2 weeks, I get it. I truly do. It's a fluid, but we're 5 weeks into this. So there really should be a bunch of tightening up. People should be laid off unless we need them, and they're essential, and they get paid for the work that they do, the hours they work only, until this all comes back to where we need to be. Well, we can respectfully disagree, and that's okay.
I would just add that there's contract obligations. I either have to lay you off and you don't come in. I can't split it. I can't say you're laid off Monday and Tuesday, but you come in. You have to pick one or the other. These people work under a contract. I can't say you're laid off for these 2 days, but Thursday and Friday we'll pay you. It doesn't work that way. They get their work done. We're you're right. Under normal circumstances, council member, I agree with you, but we're under unusual times, and I don't want any employee there that doesn't need to be there. But we have certain things we have to get done, and I can't say I'm going to pay you Monday and Tuesday, but not Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's like being on vacation or a sick day or a personal leave day. You get paid those days. There's not a week that goes by with the contracts that I deal with the secretaries, the public safety officers. They get paid their 40 hours. If they take 3 weeks off and they haven't been to work for 3 weeks because they use 3 weeks of vacation days, they still get their base pay, their salary. It's a contract. You can't just pick and choose things from it and pull it out. You either have to lay them off, and we talked about that. I can't lay these people off. They're essential to the operation. I need them there. Do I need them there 40 hours? No, some days, some weeks 20, sometimes 30, sometimes 10. I don't even think it's gone that low, but I can't do that. I don't have that option. I get what you're saying, but we've never dealt with this before. But
I get it. I do.
I get what you're saying, but we can't pick and choose. It's one, for me, it's one or the other. And the other doesn't work because I need them there. They are essential.
Councilman Baranski.
I think that the governor just proved that it was different in the beginning, and we have to be conscientious. And I'm not sure why, no disrespect to interim director Pettis, the PSOs, I don't think anyone's considering them, talking about laying off in that department. It's about, if you have enough work for 40 hours, you have 40 hours of people come in. So you lay off half the department at this point. That's what you can do. An essential service does not equal you must save all of your people. That's the difference as this process goes on. And it would sort of be the same in the public safety department. Is there a way you can take some of your people who aren't as, they're not going to court, or they're not going to the schools, or they're not doing whatever, to give relief to the medics or the PSOs that are going on the road and are putting themselves at risk and aren't getting any days off? Because every time you quarantine, I'm assuming there's overtime expenses, and because they have to be taken off the road. Those are totally different considerations. And it's simply that in the beginning, in the first couple of weeks, of course, obviously, everyone's trying to figure it out. But at this point now, 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, 8 weeks in, I would have expected we would have been more proactive in not starting the conversation now about how we take advantage of the state and federal benefits to save us money, because I just don't see how it's fiscally prudent if you have employees not working and you can offer them a layoff. And the reality is, it is what it is. I'm with Councilwoman Kalka.
Well, there's certain, I can't have a patrol person, a public safety officer do a secretary's job. That's all we're talking about. If I don't know specifically what you're talking about, but if
I'm
that's
not talking about the PSOs. That's the problem.
I'm not either.
Pettis, we're not talking about the PSOs. We're talking about the Parks and Rec, the DPW, the whoever
Building
else.
Department,
Yeah, all of those people that are not working 40 hours but getting paid 40 hours. I think that's what we're all
well,
questioning. And it's the
public safety officer. That's why I mentioned it, because you mentioned it.
Oh, I only referenced since you were discussing it is there a way that we can provide some relief to our guys and ladies that are there? Because I'm assuming, like every work, my work's low, so I'm doing this, and because the courts are closed. So that, and I'm assuming you're doing those kind of considerations of, hey, how can I give my medics a break so they don't have to be doing, the craziness. I'm assuming the brunt of it is falling on them, but that's why this conversation isn't really directed to the PSOs.
Okay. Anybody else on that subject? Okay, Wayne, just update council then when you get a chance. You're clarifying exactly what's going on. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll work down to, we dropped down item A and B, and so we'll go back to 7A, tabled item, set public hearing, the notice of public hearing on proposed 2021 budget and property tax millage rate. Who would like to take the lead on this? Mr. O'Neill or John?
Well, I mean,
It's-
it's a required notice that we have to put in the paper, and we'll make sure it's accurate. We'll check all the numbers, make sure it's accurate. But we're required to put that in there. Now, the numbers that we'll put in there is the maximum we can allowable that we can levy for the different areas, and then if there's any, you could decide you want to roll back the taxes from 18.929 mils or whatever else, you can do that. But again, we're slowly crawling out of this hole that we're in from 2006, when the property taxes values dropped like a rock. I think it's up about 3.06% this year, which is a good thing. And we got a long ways to go before we get back to where we were before. If we ever get back there.
Okay, well, I'll just be looking for a motion then.
Oh.
Councilman Pro Tem Winowicki. Unmute yourself, Dave.
I was about to make the motion that we go ahead and set the public hearing with the recommendation of, again, you can set for the maximum, but I think our residents know, and I think everyone else knows, that that's not what we're going for, but you can never go back. So let's set the public hearing for the maximum amount for the proposed 2021 budget.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Denal.
I have.
You have to have the number, right?
It's still on the table.
Oh,
We
yeah.
need
Take it off the table.
Take it off the table like we did earlier.
I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion to untable it.
Okay, we have a
Okay.
motion and a second to untable. Motion by Ms. Shornack, second by Ms. Baranski to remove from the table. Need a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
She's muted.
Okay, Member Blanky. Member Carnegie.
Yes.
Member Lesage.
Yes.
Member Kalka. Member Shornack.
Yes.
Member Winowicki.
Yes.
Okay. Did I get y'all? Yeah.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to redo your motion, please?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to set the public hearing for Thursday, May 14th, 2020. During the regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. within either virtual or chambers, whatever happens. And just to set the public hearing on the recommendation of the budget, 9 mil, and the 9 mils of Public Act 33.
That's a separate
That's a
motion.
separate one. That's the second one. You mean the first
Second
one?
motion.
For the budget, the maximum allowed.
Yeah, that's the City of Fraser combined notice of public hearing on increasing the property taxes.
Yeah,
And
but
we're setting the
PA 30
public hearing.
PA 33 is a separate motion.
Yeah.
That's all you said. You added the 9 mils. So that's in a separate, that's in the next act.
Yeah, you don't have to say the 9 mils.
You did it right the first time.
Yeah.
You don't have to set the millage rate yet.
Right.
It's
So
just-
we have a motion and we had a second.
Yeah.
And
The first motion, yeah.
yes.
for
Call
May the
for
14th.
roll call vote, please.
Yes, Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornak,
Yes.
Member Winawiki.
Yes.
All right, wonderful.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to remove from the table public setting for item B, setting a public hearing 2021 special police and fire assessments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to remove from the table. Need a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky,
Yes.
Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornak,
Yes.
Member Winawiki.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, off the table.
It's off the table, on the table. Would someone like to take first stab at this one? If not, I will. Go ahead, Councilman Kolka.
Thank you. I just have a comment. I just wanted to talk about some of the numbers. I know it's late, but I just really wanted to talk about some of the numbers. I know we can't go back, but I was hoping at least to talk, kind of give the residents something, because as soon as we say a millage rate amount, they're going to believe that that's what we're going to set. I don't know if that's what we're going to set, but for me, I'm not anywhere near that. For me, I'm more like 3 to 5. But this is why I really need all of the numbers, specific numbers with the documentation to show us where the money's coming from and why it's being paid the way it is. And if we use some of the money from the capital outlay to just get us through this next year, because I want to give the residents as much of a break as possible. I really, really liked Councilman Lesage's idea about the water and sewer. That was really great, spot on with regard to giving them a good break. I want to keep that, and that's what I'm going to be pushing for, because I'm nowhere near 9. And I would recommend that we set it at 7, so that we know, the residents know we're really working hard. We're not just going to go, and I know how nervous they get, and but for me, it would be, I would think 7 would be in the ballpark of the range that we can figure this out. So for me, it would be 7. That was the only comment that I had.
Councilwoman Baranski.
Sorry, so was your suggestion that we set the public hearing for 7?
Yeah, that was what I, instead of 9, just so
No.
that they know we're,
Yeah.
at least for me, I'm trying to work very diligently, and not to say that David isn't, but when residents hear 9,
Yeah.
that's what they hear.
I'm with you, and I'm gonna make that motion that we set the public hearing. I'm getting the language. For the May 14th meeting, with 7 mils,
I'll second.
So not to exceed 7 mils.
not to exceed 7 mils.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on that motion? And as a reminder to the audience, if you're listening, it's just a setting amount of money. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It can happen 7 or less. And obviously, by listening to council, everyone's going to do the best they can to keep that number down. That's my comment on the motion. We need a roll call vote, please.
Member Baranski,
Yes.
Member Blanky, Member Carnegie,
Yes.
Member Kalka,
Yes.
Member Lesage,
Yes.
Member Shornack,
Yes.
and member Winawiki.
Yes.
Go ahead, Don. I know you want something.
Is it obvious? I just wanted to.
You're just coming through my computer like this.
I'm ready. Here I come. Just real briefly, I wanted to wait till the motions were done. I just wanted to remind everybody that the language that was in the backup indicating the public hearing will be held within the council chambers, that is obviously subject to change based on the governor's updates tomorrow and any extensions of her orders. I had a long conversation with the municipal and legislative group today on a webinar, and there is no extension yet for the order that authorizes these virtual meetings. So the debate in legal circles is, well, the order doesn't really say you have to have her authority to meet virtually. It just says to the extent the Open Meetings Act requires you to be in person, you don't have to right now. But that won't apply at our next council meeting unless she extends that. So then we'll have to make the decision, as many municipalities will and school districts. Do we want to meet virtually anyway, even though she doesn't have a new order in place? Or do we want to go back to meeting in person? And what happens if there's a stay-at-home order, but no order for virtual meetings? We're going to work through all that, but I just want everybody to know that the notice may end up being changed, and it may be another virtual.
Oh, understandable. We'll make that decision once we get the updates, because I know I'll be on that call tomorrow too. Councilman Baranski.
Yes, as it pertains also to the budget, then my thought was so that the residents understand it. I would normally bring it up later, but it's kind of timely here. My thought was that we have the public hearing on the 14th and have some discussion about the budget, but that we set a special meeting for the 21st to finalize the budget after consideration for the public comments, additional adjustments that may need to be made in light of what we get back. So that's what I wanted to give consideration for. I don't know if we need a motion now or we wait till the 14th or how we go about that, but I just wanted to throw that out as my thought process for how the next steps of the budget go forward.
Well, I have that date down as an option maybe for a special meeting, and that was going to be determined after the phone call tomorrow with this state. So, I mean, we can go ahead and set that if you want. I don't have a problem setting that already.
Okay. So, Don, do we need a motion then?
So if the question is
a budgetary meeting only, just a budgetary meeting, nothing
right,
else.
You would essentially be moving right now to set May 21st at a time to be, you can pick the time as well.
Right.
For a special meeting of the Fraser City Council with one agenda item.
Exactly.
For the adoption of the budget, correct?
Yes.
So if you'd like to make that motion and it is approved, then that will be set on your agenda and on your calendar going forward. And then on the 14th, if something should change and you decide you're ready to do it that night, you can always just rescind that and cancel that special meeting.
Oh, sure.
Hey, Don.
Yes.
The charter says we're required to have the budget approved by the third Monday, which is the 18th. So you'd have that special meeting on that Monday, the 18th.
I'm not worried about the charter requirements under the state of emergency.
That's fine.
As long as that still exists, we have the authority to do what we need to do.
That's fine.
Yes, and please, council, we will only have that one item on the agenda. We will not be adding a bunch of stuff on the agenda.
Yes.
Thank you.
I make that motion then to have a special meeting on May 21st for budgetary consideration only.
At what time would you like it? 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
6 p.m.?
Sure.
6 p.m. We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'm sorry.
Seconded.
Patrice, Councilwoman Shornack seconds. Need a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Gotta unmute.
Okay, Member Blanky? Member Carnegie?
Yes.
Member Kalka?
Yes.
Member Lessig?
Yes.
Member Shornack?
Yes.
Member Winawiki?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may be excused from the meeting.
Yep, we're all set, Dave. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, if you got any questions, give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Report of mayor and city council. We'll start off with councilwoman, since she just moved up to my top corner. Ms. Shornack, you're first.
Oh, I have nothing.
You have nothing?
Other than to tell our seniors, all the seniors from Fraser High School and all the other high schools, and the kids from college and everything that were supposed to have all their celebrations and everything like that. Congratulations, and I'm sure in the next couple months we will figure out something to do for for friends and family to get together to celebrate something that is a rite of passage. So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
yeah, really sad
It
for
really
a bunch
is.
of kids too. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilman Lessig.
I don't have much. I'll just say thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mike. Councilwoman Blanky.
I would just like to make sure that everyone knows that on behalf of the council, we have a residence, the Hirschmans that live here. And Denise Hirschman was our magistrate for many years here in the city of Fraser. And unfortunately, pardon? Her son succumbed. And so on behalf of the city council, I'd like to relay condolences and sympathy for your loss on your son. Thank you. Good night. God bless us.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kolka.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of quick things. On the notice for the special meeting for the budget, it says on there that a copy of the proposed budget will be available at City Hall, as well as the water and sewer rates. We need to have that changed because clearly City Hall is closed. So it really needs to not only be put up on the website, YouTube, and whatever we've put on YouTube, we need to maybe exchange out some of those, the presentations, so that the residents can actually see the dollars and cents of the budget, even if we can direct them to another area, just so that they do have access to it themselves, because obviously
This one, Michelle.
obviously that's not gonna be able to, it's not gonna work out because they won't be able to get to City Hall to pick up a copy of the water and sewer rates. Also, too, if we could get something that shows the difference, the 3.5% versus, and I think John, you talked about getting us what that differential would be, whatever it is, the 16% versus the 3.5, and then there was an added amount that I apologize, I can't grab my notes right now, but if maybe we could have something that we can show the residents what that figure is, so they can see that as well. I think that would help out. But yeah, anything we can do to kind of fix those budget presentations to make them a little bit more user friendly, so that the residents can actually see the figures that are on there, even if we direct them to the other budget. That would be really great. And then obviously next meeting, or when we get a chance, we'll get those other budget figures, and then we can really kind of get into the nitty gritty and figure out what we're going to do for mills. So for the residents, stay safe, stay where you're at. I know it's not an easy time, but our Fraser Public Safety will be there for you. Our firefighters will be there for you. And we have the utmost confidence in them. We know they're working very hard. And I know this isn't easy. I know that the governor's orders, can't make sense of it. I totally get it, but it is for the greater good of everyone. And this is why we're asking the hard questions today. Nobody wants to get laid off. I don't want to lay people off, for sure. I don't, that's not, and it's hard to do. It really is. But we have to look out for your money. And that's what we're trying to do when we're trying to make sure that, we're being as transparent as possible in this budget process, so that you understand where we've come from and where we end up and how we got there in between. So that's all we can do for you. And we hope that you do pay attention and that you, if you have any questions, please reach out to any of us. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. It is our job to be here for you, and we will do everything we can to help you understand. If not, I can have you always call Mr. Lusich because he knows the answer to every question in the budget there is because he's way smarter with the numbers than I am. So that being said, please be safe, and we will see you in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Baranski.
I just want to kind of reiterate Councilman Kalka's comments, both to the residents and the employees. This is not what I signed up for. No one signed up for COVID-19. I want to thank the employees for what they're doing, the PSOs for keeping a positive attitude and trying to add some fun into a very stressful situation, both for them and the residents. There's some great things going on that, you see the fire truck and the kids are waving and that's amazing and that's awesome. But at the same time, understand where we're coming from. We're trying to balance a budget that already wasn't balanced. And it is a tightrope that is very tough to walk. And none of the decisions we've discussed today or that we implement, we all are paying the tax. We all are making the sacrifice. So please reach out, share your concerns, but just know that from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of my head, I'm trying to do what's best to make sure that our city maintains a public safety department, a DPW department, a building department, an IT department as it is, because that's where I want to live. That's why I moved here. That's why I want to live here until the day I die. So I just want everyone to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I'm left just to update everybody on, I'm still on the weekly calls, updating everybody as much as I can. I know the director's been updating me on a lot of different things also in council. For the residents, Fraser is, as I said the last time, even though we're 4 square miles, we got some new numbers this week. In 4 square mile town, we are the second highest per square mile of COVIDs out of 26 cities. So that means in Fraser, we've had about 119 cases to date. So when you're out about in Fraser, going to the Meijer stores and going to that, doing your necessities, if you have to go out, please wear the proper masks, wear gloves, clean your hands, wash your hands, back and forth, even by handing off bags and bags of groceries. So please take all precautions. We want to be the smallest city with COVID, not one of the largest cities with COVID. That's all I have. I also thank the departments and everything what they're doing to keep us going. I thank the girls for trying to make me look smart up here. I know it's a little crazy with this technology, and sometimes it was just the computer glitch didn't recognize the headphones I had on, so that's why it never heard anything. So thank you, Ed. At this time, I would like to open it up to citizen participation. If there's anyone in the audience with
Don needs you.
I would like to participate.
Okay, let's do this
No, not
first.
him.
No, I love all of you, but you all let me down. Not one of you wished everybody a happy Mother's Day because we won't see everybody again until then.
When's Mother's Day?
My mother just emailed us about how sad it is that she's stuck in her home and can't go out for a few weeks. And I thought of her and I thought we have to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day. That's all I have.
Does your mom live in Fraser?
Of course, absolutely.
Give me the address. Tell her I'll drive by in a fire truck.
Oh, that's so nice.
We would love that. Yes.
Okay, Director Pettis.
Yeah, I had a question. You guys came out of closed session and you had a vote on 5B, but nothing on 5A, and that's the mediator's agreement on the public safety officer's contract. Are you taking a vote? Are you taking any type of action on that tonight? What's going on with that?
Mr. Denault.
Want me to take that? Yeah, the answer to your question is the council gave direction in closed session, but not through any sort of formal action or vote. So that's all that we can talk about in open session.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll take it out to the council or out to citizen participation. Is there anybody, Michelle, out there? We are checking in a waiting room and not for patients. Last call. We see nobody at this time. Okay, let the record show that there was nobody who wanted to participate over the web with our meeting tonight. At that time, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion in 5 seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.